Welcome back. You're watching Market Sense on ET now. The markets at this point of time are holding out in the positive territory. And in fact, above the 72.20 mark, 72.28 on the last tick. But let's connect with the management of PNB Housing Finance and understand what the budget expectations are for the housing, from the housing sector rather. Sanjaya Gupta, MD of the company, now joins us. So great to have you with us, Mr. Gupta. First up, tell us what are the budget expectations as far as the housing sector is concerned?
Well, thank you and good afternoon for having me over. I think the major expectation from our side of the budget is that the finance minister should be making a lot of talks about the housing finance sector. The sentiments are down, so there should be right sort of stances towards the housing sector. Now, talking about the end customer, I think the tax incentives need a relook, a serious relook, because they are not catching the imagination of the youngsters to make their home purchase decisions for a very long time. And from a housing finance sector, we are looking at the availability of long-term credit at reasonable cost to the housing finance sector. And I can identify one of the things is covered bonds that the housing finance sector has been looking at for a very long time, to have some sort of a governance model around that source of fund.
Right. Since you spoke about tweaking of taxes, any changes that you see in the tax slab that will help increase disposable income?
Well, what has happened is that the entire, if you see the income tax rebates and concessions are around housing loans. Now, a lot of people, especially the self-employed people, do not take formal sector loans and they invest their own capital. There is no incentive for that segment of the society. And you'll be surprised to know that about 65 to 70% of new housing happens by the self-employed segment, which only has a penetration of formal borrowing of about 23 to 25%. So we have to look at the capital investment of individuals too in housing, which should attract some sort of a direct tax concession.
Okay. Can you also tell us about moving away from the budget, and if you talk about business then, and what's your outlook on growth and AUM book over next 1 year, and where do you see your AUM over the next 2 years from current levels?
Well, we have surprisingly done pretty well, and we are outliers on the growth rates of the industry. Even this year, we would be seeing a significantly higher top line and bottom line growth with ever lowest gross NPAs. And we expect to carry on a journey like this for another 2 to 3 years more. I'm very confident of the strengths of PNB Housing. So we are going to grow real fast.
But how would you manage that, sir, given that credit growth is roughly trending at about 11%, which is much lower than the trending average? I mean, technically speaking, 15%, double up to the growth numbers. So 7.5% if growth is trending at that mark, then you would see credit growth at 15% plus, but that's not happening. So in an environment where demand is slow, how do you see the trend changing for yourself?
Well, one is that we are only, as of today, as I'm speaking, we are only available in 35 urban cities. And so our geographical expansion is going to take us ahead. And I'm sure that we will manage a higher double-digit, growth rate. So, I mean, we are, as I said, only in 35 cities. There are about, players of our size which are in about 200 cities. We are going to go to another 2025 in the coming year. So I expect that, our growth trajectory will be pretty secure, and we will maintain a very healthy rate of growth.
Okay, I was just talking about bank credit, and viewers can see on the screen on how from FY12 onwards, where bank credit was roughly at 19%, it's dwindled down considerably to a figure of 11%, and that's the expected credit growth number for FY16. Sir, just one question. There were media reports earlier talking about the IPO plans of about 2,500 crores. Is it still on the cards? If so, how much would you look to raise, when?
Well,
the details?
Well, one is that I can't comment on it, and the other thing, and a clarity that I want to bring in this speculative, environment is that, my board has to clear the future capital raising plans of the company. And as I keep saying, we have just finished a round of rights issue of 1,000 crores in August of 2015. And yes, for our future growth, we do require capital, but the two shareholders have yet to decide on what will be the mode of capital raise, whether it will be another infusion from the existing shareholders or we are going to go to the market.
When will that decision be made?
Size will also get determined by the two shareholders and our business plan for another 3 years,
I was just asking, when do you think that decision would become concrete, choosing either way of raising capital?
I think first quarter of the next fiscal is when we will get clarity, because we have enough and plenty of capital to, maintain our growth rates till about mid of next calendar, the current calendar. So I think in first quarter we should get some clarity from our two stakeholders.
Okay, and we await those clarities. Thanks very much for taking time out and chatting with us, as well as sharing your budget
and thank you for having me over.
Thank you very much. Well, let's move on then. And speaking on NPA concerns, Arundhati Bhattacharya, the chairman SBI, sees the tightening of laws from government hopefully